Oh, darling, why are you still awake? You've got to be up early tomorrow. You can't sleep? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, love. Would you like me to tell you a story? Maybe listening to my voice will help you fall asleep. I thought you liked that. Let me think. Well, once upon a time, there was a princess. A very sleepy, tired princess. But no matter how tired the princess found herself, she could never fall asleep, for she had been cursed by a terrible spell. And so the princess called upon her shield maiden, a strong woman clad in shining armor that was charged with protecting the princess from any and all evils.
Shield maiden, she said, before I find a cure for this spell, I will not be able to attack my nicest princess if I can never get rest.
And the shield maiden, ever so strong, nodded and set off with a determined glare at the horizon. With each bump on the road that rattled her carriage, the shield maiden found herself longing to be by the princess's side. It was her duty after all. But that wasn't the only reason. She admittedly found herself smitten by the young princess. Her sweet voice, her cute face, her soft eyes. She perished the thought, however. Love between a knight and a noble was forbidden. It was the following evening when the shield maiden reached the base of the evil witch's tower. The witch, we'll call her, Witchy McWitchface. You're supposed to be trying to sleep. Don't make fun of my story. So, where was I? Alright, the shield maiden had reached the witch's tower by twilight. The stars had just begun to twinkle out into view, and the clear night sky reminded her of the dazzling eyes of the princess, which strengthened her resolve. She kicked down the front door with a heavy foot and raised her sword high above her head. She called out, "Witch of the tower, face me at once!" The only reply she found was her own echoing voice and a distant gross cackling. The shield maiden did not lose hope and continued into the tower in hopes of finding the evil that dared to hurt her sweet princess. The first room was large and sparse of anything other than old oil portraits and landscapes. As she made her way into the center, green fire erupted around her. It whirled by her, and she felt sweat begin to lace her forehead. She thought quick, dug her sword between the stone tiles beneath herself, and kicked off the hilt to jump over the flames. The knight just barely missed the flame, save for the ends of her hair that escaped her helmet. She took a defensive stance and scanned the room for more threats, but the circle of green flames in the center seemed to be the only hazard, which slowly died down. She kept up her shield as she surveyed the room, and she heard again that distant cackling. The shield maiden's eyes narrowed. She wasn't sure what she would be facing, but she reminded herself who this was all for. She needed to save her princess. With her determination revealed, she retrieved her sword, strode towards the further wall, and climbed the staircase that was built into it. The second floor was smaller than the first, but much more crowded. It seemed to be a library of some kind. Massive shelves that reached a 10-foot high ceiling were covered in heavy-set books. Animated tones with glowing glyphs and shining pages fluttered around in the air like birds. She took a single step forward, and every floating book froze in the air, turned sharply towards her, and began blasting magic at her. She held up her shield and ran between the massive piles of books for cover. As she turned the corner of one pile, she was blindsided by a bright purple haze that covered her head. She blinked and found herself in a sweeping field with grass that licked her ankles and wind that whipped up her hair. She wasn't wearing her armor anymore. In fact, she was wearing a comfortable sundress. She felt slightly out of place with her muscular frame and bottle scars on display, but it felt nice regardless. She heard a voice call out from behind her. "Good afternoon, my lady." It was the princess. She turned and saw her. She was dressed in fine but casual clothing, resting in the shade of a large oak tree. The shield maiden had felt her face warm up as she stepped towards her. She began to bow, but she stopped her. Just, she spoke effortlessly. "No need to be so formal." The she maiden was taken aback. She was always formal to the princess. Why should it be different now? The princess chuckled and said, "This isn't reality, of course. We're in a dream, sweetheart." The shield maiden didn't know how to respond. She looked around the empty field in amazement. "How do I leave?" she asked. The princess smiled and shook her head. "Why would you want to leave? I have everything you could want here. We can be with each other without a concern of forbidden love. There won't be any wishes to curses or kingdoms to stand between us. Just you and me." The shoe maiden bit her lip and looked around the field again. It was perfectly green and there were clear skies stretching forever outwards. She spoke slowly, but the real princess is still out there. She's still cursed. The princess chuckled and said, "It doesn't even matter if you forgot about her. You could live the life you always dreamed of." The dreamy princess laid a gentle hand on her shoulder, and in the mellow glow, her scars faded and her calluses healed. The princess smiled and said, "You don't need to be strong here. No more suffering, only peace." The shield maiden didn't speak for some time. Her knuckles turned white as she clenched them, and she feared that she would begin to cry. She spoke a single strong word. "No." Princess was shocked. "What do you mean, no? This is everything you could want." She then brought up a clenched fist and drove it into the false princess's gut. She shouted, "It's not about what I want. It's not about my peace. It is my will and duty to protect my princess, and I will not let any bribe or threat get in my way." The false princess clutched her stomach and looked up at her with a snarl. When she opened her mouth to speak, she drove her foot into it. As it collided, she was surrounded by a bright flash as if the sun had exploded, and she found herself right back in the fray of flying bugs and magic missiles. She rolled to her feet and shouted boldly, "I will save my princess, and I will not let you stop me." And then she charged forward, slashing animated bugs out of the air and deflecting spells. She found the staircase landing and stumbled up the stairs with only moderate injuries to one arm. She stepped into the doorframe of the final door of the tower. She held onto the wall with her good arm and scanned the room. It had very little furniture, but there were bottles and parchments strewn all over the floor. A humped figure stood in front of a large cauldron. As the shield maiden stepped forward, the witch cackled and turned towards the knight. The witch spoke with a scathing voice. "Hee hee! So here you are!" "Quit laughing. I'm trying my best here. You're supposed to be sleeping." As I was saying, the witch said, "So, here you are. I've been waiting for you, miss." Stop giggling. I'm trying to tell a story here. You know what? I'm fine. The witch was interrupted by the shield maiden throwing a glass bottle at her head. The witch keeled over and whimpered. The shield maiden slowly walked over and held a thick armored forearm over the witch's throat. She spoke angrily. "You cursed my princess. How do I lift it?" The witch giggled and spoke. "You saw it in the mist. All you need is true love's kiss." The shield maiden, "Hey, I told you to stop laughing." Yeah, so what if it's an outdone trope? Do you want me to kiss you to sleep or not? That's what I thought. But you won't get it unless you let me finish the story, okay? Good. Now then. The shield maiden's eyes widened and she felt her face get hot. She spat angrily. What kind of game are you playing at, witch? The witch cackled and said, Only some fun, but you better hurry. Come more sun than your princess mind will turn into a slurry. The she maiden threw the witch to the floor and dashed to the window. It was too great a drop to take, so she looked around the witch's room again and spied a thick broom. She took a large gulp and steadily stood atop the broom. She was briefly lifted off the ground, and she let her nerves settle down before she lifted off again. When she felt ready, she blasted through the large window, spreading glittering pieces of crystalline glass fly out into the night air. The journey to the tower had taken a full day by carriage. She hoped that the broom would prove to be fast enough to beat that time. As she flew through the skies, parted clouds and scary birds, she realized she needed to go faster. So she began stripping her armor to lighten her load. Morning light was breaching the horizon by the time she arrived to her kingdom. Without time to lie properly, she flew straight to the grand stained glass window of the princess's bedchambers. Her exhaustion began to hit as she tumbled off the broom onto the cobblestone. Only her tin chainmail remained for protection, and she felt terribly sore from the journey. The princess only stirred lightly in response. She moaned her name groggily. Just as the shield maiden struggled to her feet, the large bedroom door slammed open, and a throng of royal guards piled in. The shield maiden gave them a dangerous look and spoke plainly, "Piss off." And then, ever so gently, she leaned over the sleeping princess and gave her a love-filled kiss. Mwah. Mwah. And as sunlight began to fill the room, the princess let out a peaceful sigh and fell asleep. Content and exhausted, the shield maiden took a deep breath and lay next to her forbidden lover. The chin had chafed, and her arm was bleeding, but as she curled up in bed with the princess, she was happier than she'd ever been in her life. And they lived happily ever after. Good night, my sweet princess. Thank you for listening to this audio. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.